The New England Watercolor Society has been active since 1885, starting as the Boston Watercolor Society. Since that time, the organization has been showcasing talent, but also the rich possibilities of water-based color. To tell us about this year's signature member show through March 4th are the Society's president, Wendy Hale, and the chair of the show, Frances Schreiber. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Wendy by asking about, I guess, the prize winners, and starting with number one. I don't usually think of this right away with watercolor, but it's a portrait, isn't it?
It is a portrait. It's done by Doucette, Gerald Doucette, and it's a lovely portrait. So detailed, and then you've got this swoosh of red, which all of us went, what? What is this red
Is she
doing
standing
here?
in front of Nike's on Newbury Street?
Yeah,
maybe?
there you go. You've got the swoosh. Goes right to her head, and great composition. Very subtle in the features, and the background is subtle as well.
Frances, what were you thinking? You were one of the chairs here in this show. What was going on in your mind when you looked at that painting?
Well, I was curious as to why that was the one that was selected. There's such a wide variety, and so many of them are beautiful. And I think that the judge most of all looked for things that had an initial impact on him, and also thought about compositions. And he really liked that spread of red with her.
And the composition is a little unusual because, you know, in the newspaper business, which I used to do before, so you don't have a face looking out of the picture.
Yes,
that's right.
exactly.
But you don't have to do that. This is art, right?
Let's break all the rules.
And they're moving in that direction now of having, cutting off parts, having the face look out. It's all quite different from 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
First, let's talk about one of the other medalists. This is Blue Harbor. And again, it's a stock topic of watercolors, scenic New England harbors, but this is not like you're in a boat or on a dock either, right? Talk about that.
He's an amazing painter. He actually uses liquid acrylic and paints, but it paints like watercolor, and he gets amazing compositions, and he uses his whites, and really the contrast between the white and the dark is quite striking with this one.
And I want to talk to the third of the top winners. It's called Raspberry Crumble. And talk about that, Wendy, because first of all, it's hard to make out the fruit right away. And I guess I'm struck by other things that are very interesting. Talk about that.
Especially the grater.
Yes.
Yeah, it's front and center. It's done a la prima, which means done right off the cuff. Not a lot of fussy planning, just painted right then and there. Just beautiful.
Yeah, you're expecting to see more food like in a still life, but this is a still life of kitchen gear.
It is. And it's very monochromatic. You think of it as it's crumble, and it's like got so many blues.
And speaking of gear, there's another painting that was part of the show. It's showing that some kind of valves and pipes and
yes.
Yeah. What's the name of that one?
Blast furnace hot valve.
Right. I mean, talk about why would a bunch of valves be a subject?
Great composition.
And she actually grew up in, I think it was Pennsylvania, in that area with the kinds of businesses. Companies that did that, but I think she used it for really the composition and the challenge of colors, and turning things that could have been very stiff into really something quite beautiful.
It occurs to me, as some artists say, that you see the abstract in the real world. This is like one of those. It's almost like an abstract design, except it happens to be something that's really there down somebody's factory or cellar or something like that.
Yes.
Completely different kind of a topic here. Another portrait that I think both of you are very fond of, a subject named Biftu. Talk about that.
Oh, it's just this charm. This child just screams, just so mischievous, and look at that attitude. He caught it right on.
It's also a beautiful example of what watercolor does, the way he kind of gets the curve of the cheek just with the way the watercolor moves on the paper. That is, I think, quite special when you see it.
Sometimes we miss a certain amount of graininess, but talk about how that expresses whatever is going on with that girl.
The graininess?
Yeah, well, you don't so much get the graininess as the highlights here.
Right.
Well, if you want white in a painting, in watercolor, you leave the white out. So you're painting everything but the negative space. You're painting the negative space. You're painting around the object. And so he's painting around each of the beads. He's painting around that nose and the cheek, that little spot of white on the lip. He's painted all around that. And
he's very talented. He didn't lift in that painting. It was just very fresh. The paint went on. He held the whites where he wanted to hold them. And all of a sudden he had this tender little child.
Oh.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Wendy Hale and Francis Schreiber from the New England Watercolor Society. Wendy, one of your paintings was in this show, and this one is from, I guess, out of the backroads of New England. Talk a little bit about that.
It's from Maine. It's from Portland, Maine. I saw these two people sitting at the diner, and I just went, oh, they melt into the seats, and sort of two birds on a line.
No, sometimes this is another rule that's violated. If you're working for a newspaper, you don't take pictures of people with their backs turned. And yet, when I'm looking at this, it almost tells me their conversation, looking at them from behind, and I don't see their faces.
Right. It's one of the things that I love is trying to capture people and getting the mood without showing the faces, or just a little bit of the faces. Yeah.
And what I like here too is not just the human bodies that seem to be having an attitude, but also what they're sitting on, those inanimate stools. I mean, they're almost like a second cast of characters.
Yeah, a little crooked, not quite steady.
All right. I want to turn to a work that Francis did that's in this show too, and this is fall colors, but it's not like those postcard intense oranges and reds. So talk about where were you when you did this?
I was up on an island in Maine, Vinyl Haven, and when fall comes, it doesn't come with intense colors. And I was struck with the delicacy of the reds and the yellows in this small grove of trees, and also had been using a somewhat new technique for me, which is called pouring. I call it squirting because I actually squirt the color. And so you're squirting, getting light colors, then holding it with the resist, and then squirting again. And so you kind of build it up from the light to the dark, but without using a brush so much.
Right.
So I thought it was a good technique to use to try to catch these leaves.
Explain the speckled effect. I mean, maybe that was squirting, but I mean, that looks like very purposeful, very precise too.
Well, for me, it's not very precise. What I basically do is put a resist material on a screen and take a straw and blow, and then it'll leave spots, and then I'll come in with another wash of color, let it dry, then do the same thing. So you're sort of building up all the leaves, and you don't have total control over it, which is what's kind of fun about it as an approach.
Wendy, talk about Busy Day. This is another one of the, and this looks, first of all, it looks almost a little like a cartoon. Right?
Yes, Louis Rizzo is from Revere, and he does comics for a paper up there. And I just think this is what I love about watercolor is you can do, there's so many things with watercolor, there's so many different styles and so many personalities. You can see the personalities. I mean, look at the little dogs playing with the ball in the front. You could do this with I think of all of the Dutch paintings and all the little characters going on in the Dutch paintings, what they're doing, and here you have it in watercolor modern day. It's a lot of fun.
Francis, I want to ask you about one more painting that looks completely different. This is called Afterglow in Mount Washington. To me, this is very realistic. I've been up here this time of year and this time of the day. Talk about that.
I think what Richard Sabin said is he was actually at the hotel looking out and saw the color and saw the light, and I think he caught it beautifully. And he held the white. I mean, that again wasn't painted on. It was, as he painted around the white of the top of the mountain.
And of course, afterglow means that when you're at the lower elevations in the foreground of the painting, it's already in shadow, and way up at the top you can also see the moon has come out. The moon is quite visible, and then there's this real bright snow cover on the presidential range.
Right.
Lovely.
Well, you talk about these gradations. I mean, these are...
It's monochromatic. It's pretty much painted with one color. I mean, it's got different colors in it, but what's so striking about it is you have the different values, the different color range of one pigment. It's just lovely.
And what's also interesting is to get that one color, it's actually a mixture of colors. I mean, if
Yes.
you look at the sky, you can tell he's used some pink, he's used some blue. So he makes his blue, it's not that he gets it out of the tube, but he kind of mixes it and then
Yes.
puts it on so it becomes its own color. And that's what I think watercolor does in a very special way.
And he's got these the rosy glow on the back mountain too.
Yeah.
Right. You had to be there to catch it.
Yes.
Wendy, you should finally mention being there means that this show is going to be running through March 4th. And where is the gallery located exactly?
It's at 162 Newbury Street at the Guild of Boston Artists. And we're open every day. On Saturday and Sunday at 1 o'clock, we'll have demonstrations and gallery talks. Gallery talks on Saturdays, demonstrations on Sundays.
And Francis, the website too?
New England Watercolor Society.org.
And it both has a gallery of the whole show on it. It has a lot of information about the Watercolor Society. The only day the gallery isn't open is Mondays. So.
All right. Thank you both very much, Francis Schreiber and Wendy Hale.